The dog tags caught the first light of dawn. 2 sets, one worn smooth by 4 years of war, the other still sharp-edged, barely 5 months old. Captain Jack Hartley held them both in his frozen fingers, watching the metal gleam against the pale Korean sky. His father's tags, his own tags, both hanging from the same chain around his neck. November 26, 1950, Udom-ni, North Korea, 50 miles from the Chinese border. The temperature had dropped to 20 below zero during the night. Hartley's breath came out in clouds of white vapor. Each exhale felt like breathing out pieces of his soul into the frozen air. He sat on the turret of his M26 Pershing tank. 88,000 pounds of American steel, 120mm armor on the front glacis, a 90mm main gun that could punch through anything the enemy had. The newest, deadliest tank in the United States arsenal. 5 of them. That's what Dog Company had. 5 Pershings, 20 men. His responsibility, his burden. The valley spread out below him, white, endless, beautiful in a way that made his chest hurt. Mountains rose on all sides like the walls of a frozen cathedral. Snow covered everything. The village, the road, the shallow frozen reservoir that gave this place its name. Chosin, Hartley had looked it up on a map. It meant nothing in English, just a name, a place. But he knew with the certainty that comes in dreams that this name would follow him for the rest of his life. If he had a rest of his life, he rubbed his father's dog tags between his thumb and forefinger. The metal was so cold it burned. He remembered the day he'd gotten them. May 1946, Fort Benning, Georgia. His mother wearing black, the flag folded into a perfect triangle. His father's division commander handing him the tags with words that meant nothing. Your father was a hero. Your father died doing his duty. Your father would be proud. Hartley had been 17. He'd stared at those tags and felt nothing but rage. Rage that his father had gone to Europe. Rage that his father had fought with Patton's Third Army through France and Germany. Rage that his father had died at a bridge. The bridge at Remagen, March 1945. A German shell, one moment alive, the next moment gone. His mother had pressed the tags into his palm, her voice quiet, steady. He was brave, Jack. I hope you never have to be. 11 years later, here he sat, wearing his father's tags, wearing his own, trying to understand what brave meant. Below him, the Marine encampment stirred, tents being struck, fires being doused, men moving through the pre-dawn cold like shadows. 8,000 Marines, 2 regiments, the 5th and 7th. They'd pushed north from the coast in a great offensive. General MacArthur had promised they'd be home by Christmas. 3 weeks away. Christmas. Hartley wondered if he'd see it. A sound behind him. Boots on frozen metal. Hartley turned. Master Sergeant Roy Brennan climbed up onto the turret. 42 years old. Face like weathered leather. Eyes that had seen Iwo Jima. The best gunner Hartley had ever known. The closest thing to a father Hartley had left. Brennan settled beside him, pulled out a cigarette, lit it with hands that didn't shake despite the cold. Can't sleep, Captain. Hartley shook his head. He slipped the dog tags back under his shirt, back under his jacket, back against his skin where they burned with cold. Bad feeling, Hartley said. Brennan exhaled smoke. The wind took it away instantly. You've had bad feelings since we crossed the 38th parallel. This is different. How? Hartley looked out at the valley, at the mountains, at the endless white silence. It's too quiet. Brennan laughed, not a mean laugh, just tired. Captain, we're 50 miles from China. We've seen maybe 3 Chinese soldiers in 2 weeks. Intelligence says there's nothing up here but farmers and snow. Intelligence is wrong. Intelligence is always wrong. That's why we bring tanks. Hartley wanted to smile, couldn't. My father always said something. Before a battle, hope for peace, prepare for hell. Brennan took a long drag, studied Hartley's face. Your father fought Germans, real soldiers, tanks, artillery, air support. These Chinese up here, if they are even up here, they got rifles from the last century, maybe a few mortars. Maybe. Captain. Brennan's voice changed, became gentler. You've been out here 5 months, not a single real engagement. Your crews are green, but they're good. The Pershing is the best tank in the world. And you've got me. Your old man would tell you to relax. Would he? Hartley didn't know. He'd never been able to ask. The sun broke over the eastern mountains. Light spilled across the valley, gold and white and blinding. Hartley heard voices rising from the camp. Laughter. someone singing. The Marines thought they were winning, thought the war was almost over. Maybe they were right. Maybe Hartley was just scared. He'd never been in real combat. Not like his father, not like Brennan. He'd graduated West Point in May '49, got assigned to the Tank Corps, trained stateside for a year. Then in June '50, Korea exploded and they had shipped him over with the first reinforcements. But by then, the Incheon landing had turned the tide. The North Koreans were broken, the Chinese supposedly staying out of it. So for 5 months, he'd driven his tanks up and down these frozen roads, escorting supply convoys, protecting engineers, watching, waiting, never firing a shot in anger, never testing himself against the crucible that had forged his father into a hero. His father had stormed Normandy, had fought through the Bulge, had died at Remagen taking that bridge, had earned his medals, his honor, his place in history. What had Hartley done? Driven around, worried, polished his father's tags. He stood. Brennan stood with him. "Get the crews up," Hartley said. "Full combat load. I want every tank ready to move in 30 minutes. Brennan raised an eyebrow. "Captain, the colonel said we're not moving out until 0900. "I don't care what the colonel said. Wake them up. Check the engines. Load the ammunition. Do it now." For a moment, Brennan just looked at him, then nodded. "Yes, sir." Brennan climbed down. Hartley heard him barking orders, heard the groans of tired men being roused too early. He didn't care. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones, in his gut, in his father's tags burning against his chest. The valley was too quiet, the mountains too still, the air too cold. He remembered a story his mother had told him about the morning his father died at Remagen, how he'd written her a letter the night before, how he'd said he had a bad feeling, how he'd said he loved her, how he'd said if anything happened, he wanted Jack to know he was proud of him. His father had died 6 hours after writing that letter. Hartley pulled out his own notepad, a stub of a pencil. He'd write his mother, tell her he was fine, tell her not to worry, tell her he'd earned these tags she'd given him. But the pencil hovered over the paper, and no words came. What could he say? That he was scared? That he didn't know if he was brave like his father? That every morning he woke up wondering if today was the day he'd have to find out. He put the notepad away. Some letters shouldn't be written. Below him, his crews emerged from their sleeping bags. Private First Class Eddie Sullivan, 19 years old, from some farm in Iowa, faced like a kid playing soldier. He'd never even seen a tank until basic training. Now he drove 44 tons of steel like he'd been born in the seat. Lieutenant Tommy Novak, 22, fresh from West Point, eager, too eager, always wanting to prove himself, always asking Hartley for advice on tactics, on leadership, on how to be a good officer. Hartley never knew what to say. How could he teach someone else when he didn't know himself? Corporal James Washington, loader, former football player, could lift a 90mm shell like it weighed nothing. Quiet, steady, the kind of man you wanted beside you when things went bad. Private Robert O'Malley, radio operator, thick Boston accent, always had a joke, always smiling. Hartley wondered if O'Malley had ever had a dark thought in his life. 20 men across 5 tanks, average age 23. Hartley was 29 and felt ancient compared to them. They looked up at him now, waiting for orders, trusting him to keep them alive. Hartley jumped down from the turret. His boots hit the frozen ground with a crunch. He gathered his platoon leaders around him. Novak, Brennan, Lieutenant David Chen, his 2nd platoon commander. "Listen up. I want every tank fueled and armed within the hour. Engines warm, crews at stations. We stay buttoned up until I say otherwise." Chen frowned. Young, Chinese-American, first in his family to serve, smart as hell. "Sir, the Marines aren't moving out until 0900. That's 4 hours from now." "I know what time it is, Lieutenant. Are we expecting trouble?" Hartley looked at the mountains, at the silence. "I don't know what we're expecting, but we're going to be ready for it." They scattered. Hartley walked between the tanks, checked the treads, the suspension, the guns. Everything looked good. The Pershing was a magnificent machine, 60 feet long, 12 feet wide, weighed more than most houses. The armor could stop anything the enemy had. The gun could reach out 3,000 yards and kill with one shot. But machines broke, machines froze, machines failed. Men failed too. Hartley wondered which would fail first. By 0700, the tanks were ready. Engines rumbling, crews inside, Hartley stood in his commander's hatch, binoculars to his eyes, scanning the mountains. Nothing moved. No birds, no wind, just silence. The Marines were packing up the camp, burning the last of the fires. They'd be ready to move soon. The plan was simple. Drive north, reach the Yalu River, the border with China, then turn around and go home. Simple, clean, easy. Hartley didn't believe in simple anymore. 0830, the sun fully up now, still no orders to move. Hartley's radio crackled. Dog 6, this is Badger 6. Colonel Morrison, battalion commander. Good man, old school. Hartley keyed his mic. This is Dog 6, go ahead. Dog 6, hold position until further notice. Intelligence reports indicate possible enemy activity to the north. Air reconnaissance is checking it out. Hartley's stomach dropped. What kind of enemy activity? Unknown. Could be nothing. Stay alert. Badger 6 out. The radio went dead. Hartley looked at Brennan in the gunner's seat below him. Did you hear that? I heard it. Possible enemy activity. Could be 3 guys with rifles. Could be 300. Or 3,000. Brennan didn't answer. Didn't need to. The minutes crawled by. 0845. 0900. Still no word. The Marines were growing restless. Some had started breakfast. Others were sitting around smoking. Hartley kept his crews buttoned up, kept the engines running. Then at 0915, he heard it. A sound, distant, faint, like thunder, but the sky was clear. He raised his binoculars, scanned the northern mountains, saw nothing. The sound came again, closer, definitely not thunder. Artillery. The radio exploded with voices, panicked, shouting, overlapping. Contact! Contact! Enemy troops moving in from the north. How many? I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands. Where's our air support? Negative on air support. Weather's closing in. All units, prepare for incoming artillery. Hartley's hands moved on instinct, training taking over where thought failed. All dog units, this is Dog 6, combat spread. Orient north, safety's off, stand by. His tank spread out. 5 steel monsters forming a line. Hartley's heart hammered against his ribs, against his father's tags. The whistling came next, high-pitched, rising, the sound of death falling from the sky. Incoming! The world exploded. Artillery shells slammed into the valley, into the camp, into the Marines who moments before had been eating breakfast. Snow and earth and fire erupted everywhere. The noise was beyond description, beyond comprehension, a physical force that shook Hartley's bones. Through his vision blocks, he saw Marines running, diving for cover. Some didn't make it, bodies thrown through the air like dolls, tents shredded, trucks exploding. More shells, more explosions. The bombardment went on, 30 seconds, a minute, forever. Then it stopped. Silence rushed back, even more terrible than the noise. Hartley's ears rang, his hands shook. He forced himself to focus. All dog units, report. One by one they called in. All 5 tanks intact. Crews shaken but alive. The armor had saved them, but the Marines... Through the smoke, Hartley saw the devastation. The camp was gone. Just craters and burning wreckage. Bodies everywhere. The living stumbling through the dead. Medics already running, already overwhelmed. The radio crackled. All units, this is Badger 6, enemy infantry advancing from the north. Estimate 500 to 1,000. All tanks engage at will. Repeat, engage at will. Hartley's mouth was dry. His tongue felt like leather. He swallowed, keyed the mic. Dog units, load higher explosive. Prepare to engage. Below him, Brennan's voice, steady despite everything. He up. The loader's response, up. Hartley traversed his turret north, put his eye to the sight, adjusted the magnification. And there they were, Chinese infantry, coming down from the mountains. Not hundreds, thousands. They moved in waves. White quilted jackets blending with the snow. Thousands of them, 10,000. More, pouring down the slopes like water, like an avalanche. The entire Chinese army seemed to be flowing toward them. Hartley's breath stopped. His mind refused to process what he was seeing. This wasn't possible. Intelligence had said a few scattered units, maybe a regiment. This was an army, multiple divisions. More soldiers than Hartley had ever imagined existed in one place. Jesus Christ. Brennan's voice, quiet, awed. Captain, I count at least 10,000, maybe more. I see them. Orders, sir? Hartley's throat wouldn't work. He stared at the mass of humanity rolling toward them, toward 8,000 Marines, toward his 5 tanks, 20 men. His father's voice in his memory, hope for peace, Prepare for hell. Hell had arrived. All units. Hartley's voice sounded strange in his own ears. Distant, mechanical. Fire for effect. Continuous fire. Make every shot count. Brennan laid the gun. The crosshairs centered on the densest part of the enemy formation. 2,000 yards out, an easy shot, like target practice. Except these targets were human beings. Living, breathing, probably scared, probably thinking about home. On the way, the Pershing lurched. The gun barked. Hartley watched the shell arc through the air, saw it impact in the middle of the Chinese formation. The explosion was strangely beautiful, a flower of fire blooming in the snow. Bodies flew, a dozen men, 24, gone in an instant. The other 4 tanks opened fire, shell after shell, the valley filled with thunder, with smoke, with death. But the Chinese kept coming, stepping over their dead, flowing around the craters, unstoppable, inevitable. Load, fire, load, fire. Brennan's rhythm, the loader working like a machine. Shell after shell after shell. Hartley lost count. 10, 20, 30. The Chinese were at 1,500 yards now, then 1,000, then 500. Small arms fire began pinging off the tank's armor. Rifle rounds, ineffective against steel, but terrifying in their volume. Thousands of rifles firing at once, the sound like hail on a tin roof. Dog 6, this is Dog 3, Lieutenant Novak's voice, high-pitched, scared. Go ahead, Dog 3. Sir, I've got enemy soldiers trying to climb on my tank. They've got satchel charges. Hartley's blood turned to ice. Satchel charges, explosives, could crack a tank open like an egg. Use your cokes. Keep them off. All units, watch for enemy infantry at close range. Don't let them get on top of you. He heard the chatter of machine guns, the heavier bark of the 50 caliber guns mounted on the turrets. His own loader, Washington, popped the hatch and manned the 50, began pouring fire into the Chinese soldiers trying to swarm the tank. This wasn't warfare, this was butchery. The Chinese came in human waves. Hundreds would die. Then hundreds more would come. No tactics, no cover, just bodies, just courage, just willingness to die. Hartley felt sick, felt like a murderer. His tank alone must have killed 200 men. 300. The valley was carpeted with bodies, the snow red, the air thick with smoke and the smell of burning flesh. But they wouldn't stop. Couldn't stop. If they stopped firing, the Chinese would swarm them, would kill them. This was survival. Pure, simple, terrible. An explosion to his left. Hartley jerked his head around. Saw Lieutenant Chen's tank. Dog 4. Smoke pouring from the engine deck. A satchel charge had gotten through. The crew was bailing out, running. Chinese soldiers cutting them down. Chen, dead. His entire crew. 5 men gone in seconds. Dog 4 is down. Someone screaming on the radio. They're dead. They're all dead. Hartley forced himself to think, to act, to be what his men needed. All units, pull back. Fighting retreat. Cover each other. Move now. The tanks began backing up. Engines roaring, still firing. Hartley saw Lieutenant Novak's tank. Dog 3. It lurched forward instead of back. Charged into the Chinese formation. Dog 3, what are you doing? Pull back. Novak's voice, breathless, terrified, exhilarated. They're everywhere, sir. I can't see. I can't see. The tank plowed through Chinese soldiers, crushing them under its treads. Then an explosion. Bigger than the first. Dog 3's ammunition cooking off. The tank exploded from the inside. The turret flew 20 feet into the air. Flames poured from every hatch. No one got out. Novak! Hartley screamed into the radio. Novak! Nothing. Just static. Just death. 7 men gone. Out of 20 in less than 10 minutes. The remaining 3 tanks fell back. Chinese infantry pursuing. The Marines had formed a defensive line. Machine guns chattering. Mortars firing. The Chinese assault finally broke against the combined fire. Pulled back. Left the valley floor covered in bodies. Silence fell. The kind of silence that only comes after violence. Broken only by the moans of wounded. The crackle of burning vehicles, the sound of men weeping. Hartley sat in his hatch. His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. He looked down at them. Saw they were covered in blood. Not his blood. Splashed back from a Chinese soldier Washington had shot off the turret. The man's blood on Hartley's hands. He turned and vomited over the side of the tank. Kept vomiting until nothing came up. until he was just dry, heaving into the snow. Brennan's hand on his shoulder. Captain, we need orders. Hartley wiped his mouth, looked at Brennan, saw understanding in the old sergeant's eyes. No judgment, just recognition. The recognition of one soldier for another after their first real taste of hell. How many rounds left? We're at 60%, 300 rounds between the three tanks. 3 tanks, 13 men left. Hartley's command cut by more than half in minutes. The radio crackled. Colonel Morrison, his voice tight, controlled. All tank commanders, this is Badger 6. Regroup at my position. We're pulling back to the road. Prepare to cover the withdrawal. Hartley keyed his mic. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. Roger, Badger 6, Dog 6 moving to your position. He looked around the valley, at the fires, the bodies, the Marines digging hasty fighting positions. 8,000 men, surrounded, cut off. The Chinese had hit them from 3 sides at once. This wasn't a raid, this wasn't a probe. This was an invasion, a full-scale assault by multiple Chinese armies. Everything intelligence had said was wrong. Everything they believed was a lie. The Chinese were here, in force, and they weren't farmers with old rifles. They were an army, a real army, and they wanted to kill every American in this valley. Hartley's tank rumbled toward the command post. The sun was still climbing. The day still young. It felt like years had passed since dawn. He touched his father's tags through his jacket, felt them cold against his skin. Hope for peace, prepare for hell. They were in hell now, and there was no way out but through. Colonel Morrison stood beside his jeep. Maps spread out, officers gathered around. He looked up as Hartley approached, took in the blood, the smoke stains, the look in Hartley's eyes. Report, Captain. 2 tanks destroyed, 7 KIA, 3 tanks operational, ammunition at 60%. Morrison nodded, didn't flinch, didn't show emotion, but his eyes were tired. The Chinese hit us all along the line. We've got reports of 120,000 enemy troops in the area, maybe more. They've cut us off from the south. The road back to the coast is gone. What are our orders, sir? Morrison looked at the map. At the narrow road snaking south through 78 miles of mountains, through Chinese-held territory, through hell. We're going to fight our way out. All 8,000 of us. Your tanks will lead the column, clear the road, hold the passes, get us through. Hartley stared at him, tried to comprehend what he was being asked to do. Sir, I have 3 tanks, 13 men against 120,000 Chinese. I know the math, Captain. I also know you're the best tank commander I've got. And those Marines, Morrison gestured at the valley, at the men preparing to move. Those Marines are counting on you to get them home. Hartley looked at his remaining crews, saw PFC Sullivan standing beside his tank, blood on his face from a cut, but alive, still smiling that farm boy smile. Sergeant Harris, Chen's replacement, checking his tank's treads. Washington and O'Malley loading ammunition with mechanical efficiency. 13 men, that's all he had left. 13 men against an army. His father had held a bridge at Remagen with 50 men for 3 days against an entire German division. Could Hartley do the same? Could he be half the man his father was? He didn't know, but he was going to find out. When do we move out, sir? 30 minutes. Get your tanks ready. We're not stopping until we reach the coast or we're all dead. Understood? Understood, sir. Hartley walked back to his tank, gathered his remaining crews, looked at their faces. Young, scared, trying to hide it, trying to be brave. Listen up. We're the tip of the spear. The whole division is counting on us. We hit hard. We hit fast. We don't stop. If your tank breaks down, you bail out and jump on another one. If we get hit, we fight on foot. We leave no one behind. We get everyone home. Everyone. Are we clear? Yes, sir. Their voices, steady, strong. Hartley felt pride swell in his chest. These men, these boys, they'd just been through hell, and they were ready to go back. Mount up. Start your engines. We move in 15. The Pershings roared to life. The sound was music, power, defiance. 3 tanks, 13 men against the world. Hartley climbed into his hatch. Brennan was checking the gun, making sure everything was ready. Sergeant, Brennan looked up. I froze when they first attacked. I froze. Brennan's face softened. Understanding. Compassion. Everyone freezes their first time, Captain. Your father froze at Normandy, told me so himself. Hartley's head snapped up. You knew my father? Served with him for 3 months in France, before he got transferred to Patton's army. He was scared every single day, but he did his duty anyway, just like you're doing now. Just like he did at Remagen when that bridge needed taking. Scared but doing it anyway. That's what brave means. Tears threatened. Hartley pushed them down. Not now, not here, maybe never. Think we'll make it, Sergeant? Brennan smiled, a tired, sad smile. Doesn't matter if we make it or not, Captain. Matters that we try. That's all any soldier can do. Try. And keep trying until there's no try left. The column began to form. Trucks, ambulances, jeeps, thousands of Marines on foot, the wounded strapped to hoods, to fenders. Anywhere there was space, everyone moving, everyone desperate to escape the trap. And at the front, 3 M26 Pershing tanks, Hartley's command. The radio crackled. All units, this is Badger 6, move out. God be with you all. Hartley keyed his mic. Dog units advance, standard interval. Watch for ambush, let's bring them home. The tanks lurched forward, treads biting into the frozen ground. The column following, slowly at first, then faster. The road stretched ahead, narrow, winding, disappearing into the mountains. 78 miles, through enemy territory, through Chinese armies, through certain death. But there was no choice, no alternative. Forward was the only direction left. Hartley looked back one last time, at the valley, at the battlefield, at the place where 7 good men had died, where Lieutenant Novak's burning tank still smoked, where Lieutenant Chen's body lay frozen in the snow. He'd remember them, all of them, every face, every name, for the rest of his life, however long that might be. Then he faced forward, toward the mountains, toward the unknown, toward whatever waited in the frozen hell ahead. The sun climbed higher, the temperature dropped lower, the wind began to howl through the passes, and 3 American tanks drove into the Dragon's Mouth. The first Chinese roadblock appeared at 1000 hours. A destroyed bridge, logs across the road, machine gun nests in the rocks above. Hartley's driver, Sullivan, stopped the tank, waited for orders. Through his sight, Hartley counted enemy positions, 6 machine guns, 2 mortars, maybe 200 infantry, all dug in, all waiting. Behind him, 8,000 Marines needed this road clear. Brennan, you see them? I see them, Captain. Can you make the shot? I was making shots like this when you were in diapers, sir. Despite everything, Hartley smiled. Then light them up. The Pershing's gun spoke. 1 shot, 2, 3. The explosions ripped through the Chinese positions, rock and snow and bodies flying. The machine guns fell silent, the mortars destroyed. The infantry broke, ran, disappeared into the mountains. Sullivan, drive over that stuff, go. The tanks surged forward, crushed the logs under 60 tons of steel, ground them into splinters, kept moving. Behind them, the column followed, step by step, mile by mile. By noon, they'd cleared 3 more roadblocks, each one harder than the last, each one costing ammunition they couldn't spare, time they didn't have. The 4th roadblock was different, bigger, more organized. The Chinese had learned, adapted. They'd positioned anti-tank guns in the rocks, old Soviet models, but deadly enough. Hartley saw the first muzzle flash, saw the shell coming, no time to react. The round hit his tank's front glacis. The impact threw him against the hatch rim. Stars exploded in his vision, pain lanced through his ribs. But the armor held. 120 millimeters of American steel, it held. Sullivan, reverse, get us behind that ridge. The tank lurched backward. Another shell screamed past, missed by inches. Hartley could feel the heat of its passage. Brennan, can you see the gun? Negative, too much smoke. Washington, pop smoke grenades, give us cover. Smoke billowed from the launchers. White phosphorus, thick as cotton. The Chinese fire slackened. Confused, blind. Hartley's mind raced. The anti-tank gun had to be taken out, but he couldn't see it, couldn't target it. And behind him, 8,000 Marines waited, trapped, dying. Dog 2, this is Dog 6. Can you flank right? Get an angle on that gun? Sergeant Harris's voice, calm, professional. Negative, Dog 6. Terrain's too rough. We'd bog down. Dog 5? Same problem, sir. We're stuck on this road. Stuck. Trapped. Just like the Marines behind them. Hartley felt panic rising, pushed it down, forced himself to think, to remember his training, his father's lessons from Remagen. When you can't go around, go through. All units, listen up. We're going to charge. Straight at them, full speed, overwhelm them with shock and speed. On my mark. Silence on the radio, then Brennan's voice, quiet, almost gentle. Captain, that's suicide. You got a better idea, Sergeant? No, sir, I don't. Then we charge, all units, form line abreast, maximum speed, fire on the move. We hit them like a freight train. Ready? Ready. 3, 2, 1, mark. 3 Pershing tanks exploded from cover. 60 tons of steel times 3, moving at 30 miles per hour. Faster. The engines screaming, the guns firing, shell after shell, not aimed, just volume. Suppression. The Chinese anti-tank gun fired. Missed. Fired again. Hit Sergeant Harris's tank. The shell punched through the turret. Harris died instantly. His gunner, his loader, 3 more men gone. But the other 2 tanks kept coming, kept firing. Hartley's world narrowed to the gun sight, to the Chinese position ahead, to the single thought burning in his mind. Forward. Always forward. They hit the roadblock at full speed, crushed the logs, the stones, the sandbags, crushed them like matchsticks. The anti-tank gun tried to traverse. Too slow. Washington put a round through its shield. The gun exploded. The crew with it. They were through. But at what cost? Another tank gone. Another 3 men dead. Hartley's command was bleeding, dying by inches, by yards, by miles. 10 men left, 2 tanks, and 70 miles still to go. The Chinese were everywhere now, not just on the road, in the mountains, in the valleys. Tens of thousands of them, moving south, following the column, harassing, waiting for the moment to strike. Hartley saw them through his binoculars. Chinese soldiers in their quilted uniforms, carrying their rifles, their burp guns, their grenades. They looked cold, tired, hungry, just like his own men. Human beings, fathers, sons, brothers, fighting and dying for causes bigger than themselves, for nations and ideals and orders they didn't question. How many had he killed today? 100? 200? He'd stopped counting, stopped thinking of them as people. Had to, or he'd go insane. But at night, when he closed his eyes, he knew he'd see them. Every face, every body, every man who died because Hartley had pulled a trigger or given an order. That was the cost of command, the weight of leadership. His father had carried it at Remagen. Now Hartley understood why his father had been so quiet after the war, so distant, so haunted. You couldn't kill that many men and not have it change you, kill you in small ways, ways that didn't show, couldn't be seen, only felt, in the darkness, in the silence, in the moments between waking and sleep. The column pushed on, past burning villages, past frozen corpses, past the wreckage of war. Chinese, American, all mixed together, all equally dead. The sun began to set. The temperature dropped, 30 below, then 35, then 40. Hartley's face felt like frozen meat. His fingers wouldn't bend. His toes had gone numb hours ago. Sullivan was shivering in the driver's seat. Couldn't stop. The cold was killing them almost as surely as the Chinese. Men were losing fingers, toes, noses, freezing to death even as they walked. The wounded suffered most, strapped to vehicles, unable to move, unable to generate warmth. Hartley saw them as they passed, their faces gray, their lips blue. Some already dead, frozen in place, still being carried because there was no time to stop, no time to bury, no time for anything but forward. Always forward. A Marine stumbled in the road ahead, fell, didn't get up. Hartley almost ordered Sullivan to stop, to help, but he couldn't. If they stopped, they'd never start again. The column would stall, the Chinese would swarm them, everyone would die. So they drove past, left the Marine in the snow. Hartley watched in his vision blocks as other Marines pulled the body to the side of the road, kept moving. That's all anyone could do. Keep moving, keep living, keep hoping. At 1700 hours, Sullivan spoke, his voice strange, slurred. "Captain, I think I'm freezing to death." Hartley looked down into the driver's compartment, saw Sullivan's face, pale, blue-tinged, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the controls. O'Malley switched place with Sullivan. "Sullivan, get into the turret, move around, get your blood flowing." They switched. Sullivan climbed up, stood in the loader's position, stamped his feet, swung his arms. Slowly, color returned to his face, but his eyes were distant, haunted. I thought I was going to die, Captain. Thought I'd just fall asleep and never wake up. You're not going to die, Sullivan. Not today. We're all going home, I promise. It was a lie. Hartley knew it was a lie. Sullivan probably knew it too. But sometimes lies were all you had. Sometimes hope, no matter how false, was the only thing keeping you alive. The column kept moving. At 1800 hours, they reached WWII, a small village at the southern end of the reservoir, another Marine regiment there. Surrounded, waiting. The column merged, grew. Now 15,000 Americans, all trying to escape. All counting on Hartley's tanks to get them through. Colonel Morrison called Hartley to the command post. Maps, radio reports, bad news. Captain, we've got a problem. The Chinese have blown the bridge at Funchilin Pass. That's our only route south. Without that bridge, we're trapped. Hartley studied the map, saw the pass, narrow, steep, a 4,000-foot drop into a gorge, and no bridge. Can we repair it? Engineers say yes, but it'll take 24 hours, maybe more. And during that time, the Chinese will throw everything at us. What do you need from me, sir? Morrison looked at him, really looked at him, saw the exhaustion, the fear, the determination. I need you to hold that pass, Captain. Alone, keep the Chinese off the engineers. 24 hours. Can you do it? Hartley thought about his father, about Remagen, about holding that bridge for 3 days, about the impossible made possible through will alone. He thought about his 13 remaining men, 10 now, about what he was asking them to do. He thought about the 8,000 Marines counting on him, the 15,000 now, all those lives, all those families back home waiting. He touched his father's tags, felt them cold, felt them heavy. Yes, sir, we can do it. Morrison nodded, respect in his eyes. Get some rest, Captain. We move at 0400. The pass is 10 miles south. You'll have until dawn to get into position. Then, he trailed off, didn't need to finish. Then the Chinese would come, and Hartley would have to hold them, or die trying. Hartley walked back to his tank. His crews were eating. Cold rations, frozen water. They looked up as he approached. Listen up. We got a new mission. Funchilin Pass. We hold it for 24 hours while engineers fix the bridge. Just us. No support, no backup. Silence. Then Sullivan spoke. That Iowa farm accent thick. Sir, that's suicide. I know. We're going anyway? We're going anyway. Sullivan grinned. That impossible, irrepressible grin. Well, hell, sir. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The others nodded, agreed. Hartley felt something break inside his chest. Pride, love, terror, all mixed together. These men, these boys, they knew what was being asked, knew they might not survive, and they were willing. God help them, they were willing. That night, Hartley couldn't sleep. He sat on his tank, looked at the stars. They were bright in the frozen air. Beautiful, indifferent. He pulled out his notepad, the pencil, wrote slowly, carefully. Mom, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone. I want you to know I wasn't scared. Well, I was, but I did my duty anyway. Just like Dad did at Remagen. I hope I made you proud. I hope I made him proud. I'm wearing his tags. I think I've finally earned mine. Tell everyone I love them. Tell them I died doing something that mattered. Your son, Jack. He folded the letter, put it in his jacket pocket, where they'd find it if he didn't make it. Then he lay back against the cold steel, closed his eyes, tried to rest. In a few hours, they'd move out. In a few hours, they'd reach the pass. In a few hours, hell would begin again. But for now, for this moment, he was alive. His men were alive. The stars were beautiful. And his father's tags were warm against his heart. Morning came too soon. The column moved at 0400, 2 tanks leading, 15,000 Marines following. The road wound through the mountains, narrow, treacherous. Chinese soldiers everywhere in the hills, sniping, harassing, never quite committing to a full assault. They knew where the Americans were going, knew about the pass, knew about the bridge. They were waiting. At 0630, Hartley's tank crested a rise. And there it was, Funchilin Pass, a narrow defile between 2 mountains. The road clinging to the cliff face, and where the bridge should have been, nothing, just empty air, a 4,000-foot drop into darkness. Hartley keyed his radio. Badger 6, this is Dog 6. We've reached the pass. Bridge is definitely gone. It's going to be a long day. Copy. Dog 6, engineers are right behind you. Get into position, hold that pass. The whole division is counting on you. Roger, dog 6 out. Hartley positioned his 2 tanks, one at the mouth of the pass, one on the flank, covering fields of fire, overlapping arcs, textbook defense. 10 men, 2 tanks, against whatever was coming. The engineers arrived, began unloading equipment, bridge sections, cable, tools. They worked with desperate speed, knowing time was everything. The sun rose higher. The wind howled through the pass. Hartley stood in his hatch, binoculars to his eyes, watching the mountains, watching for movement. At 0800, he saw it. Dust, smoke, the unmistakable signs of a large force moving. Here they came. He keyed the radio. All dog units, enemy approaching, estimate 200 plus. Load he, stand by. Brennan's voice from below. They're going to hit us hard, Captain. I know. We might not make it. I know that too. Silence. Then Brennan spoke again. Quieter. Your father would be proud, Captain. I want you to know that. He'd be damn proud. Hartley's throat tightened. He nodded even though Brennan couldn't see him. Thanks, Sergeant, for everything. Hell, Captain, we ain't dead yet. Don't go getting sentimental on me. Hartley laughed. Actually laughed. Even here, even now. Then the Chinese appeared. Not 200. More. Many more. Pouring down the mountain like water, like an avalanche. Thousands of them. Maybe 10,000. Coming straight at the pass. Coming straight at 2 American tanks and 10 men. Hartley took a deep breath. Let it out slowly. Touched his father's tags one last time. Then he gave the order that would define the rest of his life. All units, fire at will. Make them pay for every inch. We hold this pass. We hold it until hell freezes over or we're all dead. Understood? Yes, sir. The voices of his men, steady, strong, unafraid. The Pershings opened fire. The pass filled with thunder, with smoke, with death. And Captain Jack Hartley, son of a hero who died at Remagen, finally learned what it meant to be brave. The battle for Funchilin Pass had begun. The Chinese came like a flood. Hartley watched them through his sight. Thousands of men pouring down the mountain slopes, their white quilted uniforms blending with the snow, making them ghosts, phantoms, death in human form. 2,000 yards out, then 1,800, then 1,500. Brennan range? 1,400 yards, wind negligible, temperature -38. Hartley's hands were steady on the commander's override. His breath came slow, controlled. Fear was still there, would always be there, but he'd learned to use it, to channel it into focus, into purpose. His father had taught him that, not with words, with example, with those 3 days at Remagen, with the dog tags now burning against Hartley's chest. Fire when ready. The Pershing lurched. The 90mm gun spoke, thunder in the frozen air. Hartley watched the shell arc, watched it fall, watched it explode in the middle of the Chinese formation. Bodies flew, a dozen men, 2 dozen, gone in a flash of fire and steel. The second tank opened fire. Dog 5's gun adding to the symphony of destruction. Shell after shell, the mountainside erupted, snow and rock and flesh mixing together, becoming indistinguishable. But the Chinese kept coming. That was the thing that amazed Hartley, terrified him. The courage, the sheer willingness to die, wave after wave of men charging into certain death. Not because they were stupid, not because they didn't know better, but because they believed in something, in their cause, in their orders, in each other. Just like his own men. Load high explosive, continuous fire. Washington fed shells into the breach, one after another. The rhythm hypnotic, mechanical. Load, fire, reload, fire, the brass casings piling up in the turret basket. The air thick with cordite smoke. At 1,000 yards, the Chinese opened fire. Rifles, machine guns, mortars. The sound was immense, overwhelming. Thousands of weapons firing at once. Bullets pinged off the tank's armor like hail. Ineffective, but terrifying in their volume. A mortar round exploded near Hartley's tank. Shrapnel rang against the steel. He ducked instinctively. Useless. If the shell hit direct, he'd never know. One moment alive, the next moment gone. Like Novak, like Chen, like all the others. Captain, I count 5,000 plus. Brennan's voice, still calm, still steady. Maybe more, they're not stopping. I see them. At 500 yards, the Chinese hit the first minefield. The engineers had laid them during the night, hasty, improvised, but deadly. Explosions rippled through the Chinese ranks, men thrown into the air, bodies torn apart. The screaming carried across the valley, high-pitched, terrible, the sound of men dying badly. Hartley felt sick, felt like a murderer, but he couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. Behind him, engineers worked on the bridge, worked to give 15,000 Americans a way home. Every minute Hartley held here was another minute closer to escape. Every Chinese soldier he killed was one less trying to kill his Marines. The logic was cold, simple, brutal. War distilled to its essence. Kill or be killed, survive or die. No middle ground, no compromise. Just blood and steel and the frozen Korean morning. At 200 yards, the Chinese reached the tank positions. Close combat, the worst kind, hand-to-hand, man against man, Chinese soldiers swarming over rocks, through crevices, appearing from nowhere, everywhere, carrying satchel charges, grenades, bayonets, whatever they could use to kill. O'Malley manned the .50 caliber, poured fire into the attackers, the heavy machine gun shattering, brass raining down, men falling, but more coming, always more coming. "They're on the tank!" Washington shouted. "They're on the goddamn tank!" Hartley heard it, felt it. Boots on steel, hands scrabbling for purchase. He grabbed his Thompson submachine gun, kicked open his hatch, emerged into hell. 3 Chinese soldiers on the turret, young, scared, desperate. One had a satchel charge, was reaching for the engine deck. If he got it there, they were all dead. Hartley fired, point blank. The Thompson bucked in his hands. 30 rounds in 3 seconds. The soldiers fell, slid off the tank, hit the frozen ground, and didn't move. More coming, climbing. Hartley fired again. Again, the magazine empty. He dropped it, reached for another. Fingers numb, fumbling, too slow. A Chinese soldier appeared at the hatch rim, young, couldn't have been more than 18. Their eyes met, for an instant, a fraction of a second. 2 young men, both terrified, both trying to survive, both knowing one of them was about to die. The soldier raised his rifle, bayonet fixed, lunging. A shot. The soldier's head snapped back. He fell, dead before he hit the ground. Brennan stood in the loader's hatch, pistol in hand, smoking. "Get back inside, Captain, now!" Hartley dropped into the turret, slammed the hatch. His heart hammered. His hands shook. He'd been seconds from death. Inches. Less. "Thanks, Sergeant." "Don't thank me. Just keep your head down, sir." The attack went on. 15 minutes. 20. 30. The Chinese throwing themselves at the tanks, at the engineers, at the impossible American position, dying by the hundreds, by the thousands. The snow around the pass turned red, then pink, then red again. Finally, mercifully, they pulled back, retreated into the mountains, left the valley floor carpeted with their dead. Silence fell, broken only by the moaning of the wounded, the crackle of small fires, the sound of grown men vomiting from the stress, the horror, the things they'd done, the things they'd seen. Hartley did a quick count. Both tanks still operational, all crews still alive. Somehow, against all odds, they'd held. He keyed the radio. "All units, status report. Dog 2, Dog 5. Both reported minimal damage, low on ammunition but still combat effective, still able to fight. Ammunition expenditure? Dog 2, 40% remaining. Dog 5, 35%. Hartley did the math. They'd burn through 60% of their ammunition in 30 minutes. At this rate, they'd be dry in an hour, and the Chinese would come again, would keep coming, until the Americans ran out of bullets, or men, or luck. Conserve ammunition. 1 round per target, make every shot count. We've got a long day ahead. He climbed out of his turret, surveyed the battlefield. The bodies were everywhere, hundreds of them, maybe 1,000. Chinese soldiers who'd never go home, never see their families, never know old age or peace or anything except this frozen Korean mountainside and the American tank crew that killed them. Hartley's stomach churned. He turned away, looked toward the bridge. The engineers were still working, still welding, still building. The sound of their tools carried across the valley. Hopeful, defiant, the sound of Americans refusing to quit. How long had it been? He checked his watch. Oh, 900. They'd been fighting for an hour. 23 more to go. An eternity. Sullivan climbed up beside him. The young driver's face was pale, haunted. He'd seen the bodies too, seen what they'd done, what war really was. Captain, I counted them, the Chinese, the dead ones. Don't. I couldn't help it. I just kept counting and counting, and I got to 200 and I stopped because I just couldn't keep. His voice broke. Tears froze on his cheeks. Hartley put a hand on the kid's shoulder, squeezed. Listen to me, Sullivan. What we did here, what we're doing, it's not murder. It's survival. Those men would have killed us, would have killed the Marines, would have killed everyone. We did what we had to do. How do you live with it after? How do you go home and pretend to be normal when you've killed so many? Hartley thought about his father, about Remagen, about the 3 days of fighting to hold that bridge, about the silence after the war, the distance, the nights his father would sit alone in the dark and just stare at nothing. I don't know, but we'll figure it out, together when this is over, if we make it. You think we will? Make it? Hartley looked at the mountains, at the snow, at the frozen hell they were trapped in. I think we'll try. That's all we can do. Try. And keep trying until there's no try left. Sullivan nodded, wiped his face, climbed back down. Hartley watched him go, wondered how much of that kid's soul had died this morning, how much of his own had died with it. The radio crackled. Colonel Morrison. Dog 6, this is Badger 6. Status? First wave repelled. All tanks operational. Ammunition at critical levels. Request resupply. Negative on resupply. Everything we have is going to the perimeter defense. You're on your own out there. Hartley closed his eyes, took a breath, opened them. Understood, how's the bridge? Engineers say 16 more hours. Can you hold that long? 16 hours, with 35% ammunition remaining, against an enemy that had already proven willing to die in endless waves. We'll hold, sir. I know you will, Captain. Badger 6 out. The radio went dead. Hartley was alone with his thoughts, his fears, his certainty that he was asking his men to do the impossible. But impossible was all they had left. The Chinese came again at 1100 hours. This time they were smarter, more organized. They'd learned from the first assault, adapted their tactics. Instead of a frontal charge, they came from 3 directions at once, trying to overwhelm the defenders through sheer geometry, through positioning, through the mathematics of death. Hartley split his fire, one tank covering each avenue of approach. It worked. For a while. They killed hundreds more. The Chinese fell back, regrouped, came again, and again, and again. By noon, Hartley had lost count of the assaults. 5, 6, 7. They blurred together, became one continuous battle, one endless nightmare of fire and blood and the screaming of the dying. His crews were exhausted, operating on adrenaline and fear and nothing else. Washington's hands were shaking so badly he could barely load the shells. O'Malley had gone silent, just stared at his radio set with empty eyes. Sullivan drove like a machine. No emotion, no reaction. Just following orders because orders were all he had left. Only Brennan remained steady, calm, laying the gun with the same precision he'd shown at 0800, as if this was just another training exercise, just another day at the range. How do you do it, Sergeant? Hartley asked during a brief lull. How do you stay so calm? Brennan checked the gun's elevation, made a minute adjustment, didn't look at Hartley when he answered. I don't feel it anymore, Captain. Haven't for years. Iwo Jima burned it out of me. Whatever makes a man feel fear or joy or anything else, I lost it on that beach. Now I'm just going through the motions, doing what I know, what I'm good at, until the day I don't. That's no way to live. Maybe, but it's a way to survive. And right now, survival is all that matters. At 1300 hours, ammunition hit 20%. Hartley made the call. All units, cease fire unless targets are within 500 yards. We need to stretch what we have left. The order went out. The guns fell silent. The Chinese noticed, sensed weakness, pressed harder, came closer, testing, probing, looking for the break. At 1400 hours, something changed. Hartley felt it before he saw it. A shift in the air, a wrongness. He scanned the mountains through his binoculars. The Chinese formations to the front looked the same, still massing, still preparing for another assault. But something was different. Something was wrong. Then he saw it. Movement to the rear, behind the tank positions, behind the engineers, movement where there shouldn't be any movement. His blood turned to ice. All units, traverse rear. We've got enemy behind us. Behind us? How? Hartley didn't answer. Didn't need to. It was obvious. The Chinese had infiltrated through the mountains during the night, or during the fighting, had used the terrain, the smoke, the chaos, had gotten around the American positions and were now moving to attack from behind. A classic envelopment, textbook tactics, and the Americans were caught in the middle. Badger 6, this is Dog 6. We are being flanked. Enemy forces to our rear. Estimate 500 plus. Morrison's voice came back tight, clipped. Can you hold them? Hartley looked at his ammunition counter, looked at the Chinese forces to the front, to the rear, did the math. Negative. If we turn to face the rear, the front attacks. If we hold the front, the rear overruns the engineers. We can't defend both directions simultaneously. What do you need, Captain? A miracle, sir. Silence on the radio. Then Morrison spoke again. Different tone. Resigned. Hold as long as you can. We're sending what infantry we can spare. ETA 30 minutes. 30 minutes. The Chinese to the rear were 300 yards away. Closing fast. In 30 minutes, this would all be over, one way or another. Hartley made a decision. The kind of decision that officers made in desperate moments. The kind that got men killed. Or saved. No way to know which until it was over. Dog 2, orient rear. Cover the engineers. I'll hold the front. Captain, that's suicide. You can't hold them alone. Watch me. Move, now. The second tank traversed its turret, began engaging the Chinese to the rear. Hartley turned forward. Alone. One tank, 4 men, against whatever was coming from the front. The Chinese must have seen it, must have understood. Because they came. All of them. Every soldier, every formation, every man who could walk or crawl or drag himself forward. Thousands of them, charging. Knowing the Americans were at the breaking point, knowing this was the moment, the chance, the kill. Here they come. Brennan's voice, still calm, still steady. Ammunition count? Hartley checked, felt his heart sink. 62 rounds, that's all we have left. Then we better make them count. The Chinese hit like a tidal wave. Hartley fired. Brennan fired. Washington loaded like a man possessed. The shells went out. 1, 2, 3, each one killing dozens. But there were thousands, and 62 shells wouldn't be enough. Wouldn't even be close. At 200 yards, the gun ran dry. Out of he, Washington shouted, switching to AP. Armor-piercing, anti-tank rounds, useless against infantry, designed to penetrate steel. Not flesh, but it was all they had left. The rounds went out, punched through the Chinese formations, through multiple men at once, the kinetic energy carrying the shells through bodies like they were paper. Terrible. Efficient. Wrong. 50 yards, then 25. Then the Chinese were on them, climbing the tank, hammering on the hatches with rifle butts, with bayonets, trying to pry them open, trying to get inside. O'Malley opened up with the coaxial machine gun. Point-blank range. Men fell away. More took their places. The 50 caliber jammed. Frozen. Useless. We're being overrun, O'Malley screamed. They're everywhere. Hartley grabbed his Thompson, prepared to open his hatch one last time, to sell his life as dearly as he could, to die like his father had died at Remagen, fighting, never surrendering, never giving up. He touched his father's dog tags, felt them cold against his chest, thought about his mother, about home, about all the things he'd never do, never see, never be. He was 29 years old, and this frozen Korean mountainside was where his story would end. Then he heard it, a sound, distant, growing closer, a sound he knew, had heard 1,000 times in training, but never in combat, never when it mattered. Aircraft engines. He looked up through his vision blocks, saw them coming through the clouds. Low, fast, deadly. F-4U Corsairs, Marine fighter bombers, the Bent Wing Angels, the Whistling Death. 6 of them, maybe more, diving through the impossible weather, through the clouds that had kept them grounded for days, coming to save the men below, because that's what Marines did. That's who they were. Aircraft inbound, Hartley screamed into the radio. Friendly aircraft, mark your positions. He grabbed a smoke grenade, popped it, purple smoke, friendly marker, billowed from his tank. Dog 2 did the same. Purple smoke marking the American positions. Everything else was fair game. The Corsairs dove. Their guns opened up. 50 caliber machine guns. 6 guns per aircraft. 36 guns total. The sound was like cloth tearing, the sky ripping apart. The Chinese formations disintegrated. Men fell in windows, in heaps, the snow erupting with bullet strikes. Then the bombs, 500-pounders, falling end over end, whistling as they fell, the sound that gave the Corsairs their nickname, the Whistling Death. The explosions were beyond description, beyond comprehension. The entire mountainside erupted. Fire and smoke and earth thrown hundreds of feet into the air. The shock wave hit Hartley's tank, rocked it on its suspension, threatened to tip it over. When the smoke cleared, the Chinese were gone. Dead, fled, scattered. The attack broken, the assault over. And through the smoke came Marines, hundreds of them, infantry, reinforcements. Late, desperately late, but there nonetheless. They hit the Chinese from the flank, from the rear, caught them in a crossfire, in a kill zone. The battle turned, the Chinese broke, fled, disappeared into the mountains, defeated, finally, impossibly, defeated. It was over. Hartley sat in his commander's seat, hands shaking, whole body shaking. They'd been seconds from death. Seconds. If those aircraft had been 1 minute later, he'd be dead now. His crew, the engineers, everyone. But they weren't. And he was alive, still fighting. Brennan's hand on his shoulder. "You okay, Captain?" Hartley couldn't speak, could only nod. Brennan squeezed once, understanding. "Hell of a thing. Thought we were done." "Me too." "Your father ever tell you about Remagen? How Patton's armor broke through right when all seemed lost?" "He mentioned it once." This was like that, right at the edge, right at the moment when death seems certain. That's when salvation comes. If you're lucky, if you're blessed, if someone up there gives a damn. Hartley looked up at the sky, at the clouds, at the Corsairs circling above, watching, protecting. Guardian angels made of aluminum and gasoline and American steel. "Thank you," he whispered. To them, to God, to fate, to whatever power had brought them here at this exact moment. "Thank you." The radio crackled. A new voice, fighter pilot, southern accent, calm, professional. "Ground element, this is Devil Flight. We're Winchester on ordnance. Bingo fuel. We've got about 10 more minutes before we need to head home. You boys okay down there?" Hartley keyed his mic, tried to keep his voice steady. "Devil Flight, you just saved our lives. We were about to be overrun. All in a day's work, friend. Weather's opening up. More flights inbound. You should have air cover for the rest of the day. Just hang tight. The cavalry's here." "Copy that, Devil Flight. And thank you. Seriously, thank you. Thank us by staying alive. We didn't fly through that shit for nothing." Devil Flight out. The Corsairs waggled their wings. A salute, a farewell. Then they were gone, climbing back into the clouds, leaving the battlefield behind. But they'd bought time. Precious time. The Chinese wouldn't try another major assault, not with American aircraft overhead, not in daylight. They'd wait for night, for darkness, for the moment when the aircraft couldn't fly. Hartley checked his watch. 1,500 hours. 9 more hours until the bridge was ready. 9 hours until the Marines could escape, could get across, could get home. 9 hours, in the dark, with no ammunition left, against an enemy that had already proven willing to die in the thousands. He looked at his crew, at Brennan, at Washington, at O'Malley, at Sullivan, saw the exhaustion in their faces, the fear, the determination. "We're not dead yet," he said, trying to sound confident, trying to be what they needed. "We hold until midnight, then we cross, all of us, together, understood?" "Yes, sir." Their voices, tired, but still strong, still willing. God help them, still willing to follow him into hell. "Resupply your personal weapons. Check the machine guns. Clear any jams. Rest if you can. When night falls, they'll come again. And this time we won't have air support. It'll be just us, just our rifles and our courage. Just men, doing what men have always done, standing, fighting, refusing to quit." He paused, looked at each of them. "Your fathers would be proud. Hell, I'm proud. Prouder than I've ever been of anything. You men are the finest soldiers I've ever known. And when we get home, when we're old and gray and telling stories to our grandchildren, we'll tell them about this day, about this pass, about how we stood when others would have run, about how we fought when others would have surrendered, about how we held the line together. Brennan smiled, a rare thing, a genuine thing. Hell of a speech, Captain. Shut up, Sergeant. Yes, sir. They worked through the afternoon, cleaning weapons, redistributing ammunition, finding anything they could use. Grenades from dead Chinese soldiers, rifles, bayonets, rocks if it came to that, anything. Colonel Morrison called at 1600 hours. Dog 6, infantry is being diverted. We've got Chinese hitting the perimeter in force. I can't send you reinforcements. Understood, sir. We'll manage. Captain, you don't have to do this. You've done enough, more than enough. I can pull you back. Let the engineers fend for themselves. Get you and your men to safety. Hartley looked at the engineers. 50 men, working with desperate speed, welding, bolting, building, trying to save 15,000 Americans, trying to get everyone home. Negative, sir. We stay, we hold. That's the mission. It's a suicide mission. Maybe, but it's our mission. We'll see it through. Dog 6 out. He cut the connection before Morrison could argue, could order him to pull back. Because if Morrison ordered it, Hartley would have to obey. And he couldn't obey. Wouldn't obey. Not now, not after everything. This was his Remagen, his bridge, his moment. The moment that would define everything. That would answer the question he'd been asking since his father died. Am I brave? Am I worthy? Am I my father's son? He'd find out. Before midnight, one way or another. The sun set at 17:30. Darkness fell like a curtain. The temperature plummeted. 40 below, then 45. The cold was a physical thing, a weapon, killing as surely as bullets, as bombs, as steel. Hartley stood in his hatch, watching, waiting, his rifle in his hands, his father's dog tags around his neck, his crew beside him, ready, willing, afraid, but unbroken. At 1800 hours, the Chinese came, not with a charge, not with waves, but with stealth, with infiltration, shadows moving through shadows, ghosts in the darkness, coming for the kill. The fight that followed wasn't a battle. It was a brawl, close quarters, hand to hand, Americans and Chinese mixing together, fighting with rifles, with bayonets, with knives, with fists, with anything. Hartley fired his Thompson until it ran dry, then used it as a club, smashed it into faces, into bodies, into anything that moved in the darkness. A Chinese soldier tackled him. They went down together, rolled in the snow, fighting for dominance, for survival, for life. Hartley got his hands around the man's throat, squeezed, felt the life go out, felt the body go limp. He stood, gasping, covered in blood. Not his blood, other people's blood, enemy blood. He'd killed a man with his bare hands, strangled him, felt him die. The horror of it hit him, made him retch, made him want to scream, but there was no time. More coming, always more coming. Washington went down, bayoneted. Sullivan dragged him to safety, tried to stop the bleeding. Washington's screams echoed across the valley, high-pitched, terrible, the sound of a man dying badly. O'Malley fought with a captured rifle, bayonet fixed, stabbing, slashing, keeping them away from the wounded Washington, keeping them back through sheer fury, through rage, through the animal desperation of survival. Brennan was everywhere, shooting, reloading, shooting again, calm, methodical, a killing machine. No emotion, no fear, just the work, just the mission, just the duty. The fight went on, 10 minutes, 20, 30, forever. Men dying in the darkness, screaming, crying, calling for mothers, for anyone who might hear, might care, might save them. But no one came. No one could. This was it. This was the edge of the world, the end of everything, the place where men came to die. And Hartley was still standing, still fighting, still refusing to quit. Then impossibly the Chinese pulled back. Again, melted into the darkness, left their dead, left the Americans gasping, bleeding, barely alive but alive nonetheless. Hartley did a head count. Washington down, badly wounded, gut shot, probably dying, the rest battered, bruised, cut, but operational, still able to fight. How many rounds left? 12. Brennan's voice hoarse, exhausted. 12 rounds between all of us. 12 rounds against thousands of Chinese, against the darkness, against the cold, against the certainty of death. Hartley laughed. actually laughed. It was absurd, insane. 12 rounds. They might as well have been armed with slingshots, with harsh words, with prayers. But it was what they had, so it would have to be enough. All right, new plan. We don't fire unless we can see the whites of their eyes. We let them get close, real close. Then we hit them with everything. Make them think we have more than we do. Make them afraid. Make them hesitate. That's all we need. Hesitation, doubt, fear. Captain, Sullivan's voice, shaking. Washington is asking for you. Hartley climbed down, found Washington lying in the snow. Blood everywhere. So much blood. The corporal's face was gray, his breathing shallow. Hartley knew that look, had seen it before. The look of a man who knew he was dying. Hey, Captain. Washington's voice, barely a whisper. I think I'm done. You're going to be fine. Medics are coming. Don't lie. I know. I can feel it. It's cold inside, getting colder. Hartley took Washington's hand, squeezed. The corporal's grip was weak, fading. I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry I brought you here. Sorry I couldn't protect you. Not your fault. I volunteered. I knew the risks. Just do me a favor? Anything. Tell my mama I wasn't scared. Tell her I died brave, even if it's a lie. It's not a lie. You are brave. One of the bravest men I've ever known. Washington smiled, blood on his teeth, in his mouth, running from the corner of his lips. Thanks, Captain, for everything, for treating me like a man, like I mattered, even when others didn't. His grip loosened. His eyes went distant, fixed on something Hartley couldn't see, something beyond the darkness, beyond the pain, beyond the frozen Korean mountainside and the war and the dying. Mama? Washington whispered. Mama, is that you? I'm coming home. I'm finally coming home. Then he was gone. The light in his eyes went out. His chest stopped moving. His hand went limp in Hartley's grip. Hartley held on, couldn't let go. This man, this boy, 23 years old, dead in a frozen pass in a country he'd probably never heard of before the war. Dead for what? For a bridge? For a mission? For Hartley's orders? For all of it? For none of it? For the simple reason that young men die in wars started by old men. Because that's how it's always been, how it always would be. Brennan appeared beside him, gently took Washington's hand from Hartley's grip, closed the corporal's eyes. He's at peace now, Captain. No more pain, no more fear, just peace. I got him killed. No, the war got him killed. The Chinese got him killed. Bad luck got him killed. But not you. You did everything right, everything you could. Sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes men die anyway. That's the price of command, the burden you carry. But it's not your fault. Hartley wanted to believe that. Couldn't, wouldn't. Washington was his responsibility, his man. And now he was dead. Another name to add to the list. Another face to haunt his dreams. Another ghost to carry for the rest of his life. If he had a rest of his life. He thought about Washington's mother. Somewhere in America, maybe Georgia, maybe Alabama. Somewhere in the South where Washington had gotten that accent. That smile, that unbreakable spirit that had carried them through so much. She'd get a telegram, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. We regret to inform you, your son, killed in action, died a hero. All the empty words, all the meaningless phrases that turned a living, breathing, laughing young man into a statistic, into a memory, into a flag folded into a triangle and handed to a weeping mother who'd never understand why, never accept it, never truly heal. Hartley had promised to tell her Washington wasn't scared, that he died brave. But was that enough? Was anything enough? Could any words justify a mother losing her son, a father losing his boy, a sister losing her brother? No, nothing could justify it. Nothing could make it right. Washington was dead at 23, would never go home to Georgia, would never marry, never have children, never grow old, never know peace. All because Hartley had ordered him to hold this pass, this frozen piece of hell that no one back home would ever hear about, that history might forget. That meant nothing except to the men who'd fought here, who'd died here, who'd carry the weight of it forever. Sullivan knelt beside Washington's body, closed the corporal's jacket against the cold, as if cold mattered anymore, as if anything mattered to the dead. But it was something to do, some small dignity to offer, some way to pretend that death was gentle, that it meant something, That Washington's sacrifice wasn't just waste, just another young life thrown away for inches of frozen ground. "He saved my life yesterday," Sullivan said quietly. "When we hit that roadblock, I froze up, couldn't move, couldn't think. In Washington, he just grabbed me, shook me, told me to drive, told me we'd get through it together. And we did, because of him." O'Malley spoke up, his voice rough, broken. He never complained, not once. Not about the cold, not about being scared, not about anything. Just did his job. Did it better than anyone, always had a smile, always had something positive to say. Even when things look bad, especially when things look bad. Brennan stood over them, silent, watching. Then he spoke, and his voice carried a weight Hartley had never heard before. A sorrow, a grief, a crack in the armor that showed the man beneath the soldier. "I've seen a lot of men die, too many, in the Pacific, here, all over, and every one of them takes a piece of you with them, every single one. But men like Washington, men with his spirit, his courage, his simple goodness, they take more, because the world needs men like that. And every time we lose one, the world gets a little darker, a little colder, a little more lost." He paused, looked at Hartley. "You honor him by finishing the mission, Captain, by getting the rest of us home, by making sure his death meant something. That's all we can do for the dead. Remember them, honor them, and keep fighting, because that's what they'd want. That's what they died for." The Chinese came again at 2100 hours. The last assault, the final push, everything they had left, every man, every bullet, every ounce of courage and rage and desperation. They came screaming, thousands of them, pouring down the mountain like water, like lava, unstoppable, inevitable, death itself given form and voice and terrible purpose. Hartley and his 3 remaining men stood alone, 4 Americans, 12 bullets, against the world. They fired, 6 rounds, 6 Chinese fell, 6 more came to take their places. "Bayonets!" Hartley screamed. "Fixed bayonets!" They drew their knives, their makeshift weapons, prepared to fight hand to hand, to die on their feet, fighting, refusing to surrender, refusing to quit. The Chinese were 50 yards away, then 25, then 10. Then the world exploded. Artillery fire, American artillery, from the main perimeter, falling on the Chinese formations. Dozens of shells, hundreds. The entire valley erupting in fire and steel. The Chinese assault shattered, broken, scattered. Hartley watched them come. Fresh troops, clean uniforms, full ammunition. They moved like men who hadn't been fighting for their lives all day, who hadn't watched their friends die, who hadn't killed until their souls went numb. They looked so young, so untested, so alive. Had Hartley looked like that once, just yesterday, just this morning? It felt like a lifetime ago, like he'd aged 100 years in a single day. Like the man who'd sat on his tank at dawn watching the sunrise was someone else entirely. Someone who'd dead and been replaced by this hollow shell. This broken thing that wore his face, his uniform, his name. The Marines hit the Chinese from the flank, from the rear, caught them in a crossfire. In a kill zone, the Chinese tried to rally, tried to regroup, but they were exhausted too, spent. Their courage and numbers and willingness to die finally reaching their limit. The battle turned, not gradually, but all at once, like a wave breaking, like a dam collapsing. The Chinese attack shattered. Individual soldiers turned and ran, then squads, then entire companies, fleeing into the mountains, into the darkness, defeated, finally, impossibly, defeated. It was over. The shooting stopped. The explosions ceased. The screaming faded. Silence rushed back. That terrible, beautiful silence that only comes after battle, after survival, after the moment when death seems certain and somehow, impossibly, life continues. Hartley waited for relief, for joy, for something, but nothing came. Just emptiness, just the hollow ache of a soul that had given too much, seen too much, lost too much. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. Had been shaking for hours, probably. He just hadn't noticed. Hadn't had time to notice. Now there was nothing but time. Nothing but the aftermath. Nothing but the reckoning of what they'd done, what they'd survived, what they'd lost. Hartley sank to his knees. His rifle fell from his hands. He couldn't stand anymore. Couldn't fight. couldn't do anything but kneel in the snow and try to remember how to breathe. A Marine captain appeared, young, clean, unbloodied. "Captain Hartley? I'm Captain Edwards, 1st Battalion. Colonel Morrison sent us. Are you okay?" Hartley looked at him, tried to focus, tried to understand the question. "Am I okay?" He'd been fighting for 14 hours straight, had killed more men than he could count, had watched Washington die, had come within seconds of death himself a dozen times, 100 times. Was he okay? "No," Hartley said, his voice strange, distant. "No, I'm not okay." "Understood. We've got medics. We'll get you patched up." "The bridge?" "Done, ready. The column starts crossing in an hour. You did it, Captain. You held. You saved them all." Saved them all. Hartley looked around. At the bodies, Chinese, American, all the dead, all the cost. Washington, Novak, Chen, Harris, 17 men dead out of 20, 85% casualties. Some mission, some victory. "Captain," Edwards' voice concerned, "you're in shock. Let me get a medic." "I'm fine, just tired, so tired." Brennan appeared, helped Hartley to his feet, supported him, kept him upright when his legs wanted to fold. "Come on, Captain. Let's get you back to the tank. Get you warm, get you safe." "What about Washington?" "We'll bring him. We'll bring them all. No one gets left behind, not today." They walked back to the tank, or Brennan walked. Hartley stumbled, his body moving on autopilot, his mind elsewhere, lost in the darkness, in the horror, in the terrible weight of what he'd done, what he'd survived. The bridge was ready at midnight, exactly 24 hours after they'd arrived. The column began crossing, slow, careful, each vehicle a victory. Each man saved a testament to the sacrifice, to the stand, to the 4 Americans who'd held impossible odds for one impossible day. Hartley's tank crossed last, the final vehicle, the final moment, the end of the nightmare. On the far side, Colonel Morrison waited. He saluted as Hartley climbed down from the turret. Hartley returned it, barely, his arm feeling like lead. "Well done, Captain. Beyond well done. You saved us all." "I lost 17 men, sir." "You saved 15,000. That's the math of war. Brutal, unfair, but simple. Your men died heroes. They'll be remembered, honored. But the men who lived, the men who made it across because of you, they'll go home. They'll live. They'll have families, lives, futures. Because of you, because of what you and your men did here." Hartley nodded, too tired to argue, too exhausted to think. He just wanted to sleep, to close his eyes and not see bodies, not see Washington's face, not see any of it. But he knew he would, for the rest of his life, every time he closed his eyes, every time he tried to rest. The faces would be there, the memories, the cost. That was the price of survival, the burden of command, the weight his father had carried at Remagen, the weight Hartley now understood. He touched his father's dog tags, felt them cold, felt them heavy. "I earned these, Dad. I finally earned these." But God, what a price. What a terrible, terrible price. The column moved south through the night, toward the coast, toward the ships, toward home. And Captain Jack Hartley rode in his tank, silent, broken, victorious. The war would go on, the fighting would continue, but for now, for this moment, they'd won, they'd held, they'd survived. And that would have to be enough, because it was all they had. The convoy moved south through the darkness. 15,000 men, thousands of vehicles, a river of humanity flowing toward the sea, toward safety, toward home. Hartley rode in his tank, silent, numb. The engine rumbled beneath him, a sound he knew so well it had become part of his heartbeat. But tonight it felt different, hollow, empty, like everything else. Behind him, wrapped in a tarp and strapped to the engine deck, lay Corporal Washington, going home. Just not the way anyone had hoped, not the way his mother had prayed for, not the way he deserved. 17 bodies total: Novak, Chen, Harris, Washington. 13 others whose names Hartley whispered to himself like a prayer, like a penance, so he wouldn't forget. So their deaths would mean something. So their sacrifice would be remembered. The column reached Kotori at 0300, another Marine regiment there. More wounded, more exhausted men who'd been fighting their own battles, their own desperate stands. All of them flowing together now, all of them heading for the same destination. Hungnam, the port, the ships, the way out. Colonel Morrison found Hartley at dawn. The captain was sitting on his tank, staring at nothing, seeing everything. The blood, the bodies, the faces of the dead. The captain. Hartley didn't respond, didn't move. Morrison climbed up beside him, sat, waited. Finally, Hartley spoke. I killed a man with my bare hands, strangled him, felt him die. I know. How do you know? Because I've done it too. Guadalcanal, 1942. I was a lieutenant, young, stupid, thought I knew what war was. Then a Japanese soldier jumped into my foxhole and we fought. Just the two of us. No weapons. Just hands. Just hate. Just the animal need to survive. I won. He died. And I've never forgotten his face. Never will. That's the price, Captain. That's what we carry. Hartley looked at him, saw understanding, saw shared pain, saw a fellow traveler on the same dark road. Does it get easier? No, but you learn to live with it, learn to function, learn to be human again. Mostly, it takes time, takes work, takes the love of good people who understand, or at least try to. Morrison pulled out a paper, official looking, typed. Effective immediately, you're promoted to major, battlefield promotion. You've earned it. Hell, you've earned a lot more than that. They're talking about the Medal of Honor, the Navy Cross at minimum. I don't want medals. I know. The men who deserve them never do. But you'll accept them anyway. Because those medals aren't for you. They're for the men who died, for Washington and Novak and Chen and all the others. They're proof that their sacrifice mattered, that someone noticed, that someone cared. Hartley took the paper, stared at it. Major Jack Hartley. His father had been a captain when he died at Remagen. Hartley had surpassed him, in rank if nothing else. Would his father be proud? Or would he be horrified at what his son had become? At what war had made him? There's more, Morrison said. We're pulling back to Hungnam. Final evacuation. The entire corps, 105,000 men, 91,000 Korean refugees, all trying to get on ships, all trying to escape before the Chinese overrun us. When? We've got 2 weeks, maybe less. The Chinese are regrouping, bringing up reinforcements. When they hit us again, they'll hit hard. We need to hold the perimeter, keep them off the port, long enough to get everyone out. What do you need from me? Everything you've got left. I'm giving you command of all remaining tanks, 18 Pershings. You'll anchor the defensive line, hold until the last ship loads. Then you get on and get out. Understood? 18 tanks. Hartley had started with 5, lost 3 at Funchilin, gained 18 more. But they were just machines, just steel. The men inside them were what mattered, and Hartley was responsible for all of them now. Yes, sir, we'll hold. I know you will, Major. I know you will. The convoy reached Hungnam on December 10th. The port was chaos, ships everywhere, loading troops, loading equipment, loading supplies. The docks packed with men waiting, hoping, praying they'd get out before the Chinese arrived. And beyond the perimeter, in the mountains, the enemy gathered, watching, waiting, planning. Hartley positioned his tanks along the defensive line. 18 Pershings spread across 5 miles. Not enough, not nearly enough. But it was what they had, so it would have to be enough. He met his new crew commanders. Young men, most of them. Replacements, fresh from the States. Eager, untested. They looked at him with something like awe, like fear, like he was something other than human. Word had spread about Funchilin, about the stand, about the impossible odds and the impossible victory. They called him Iron Jack now, the man who wouldn't break, who wouldn't quit, who'd held against thousands with just a handful of men. If they only knew, if they could see inside him, see the cracks, the breaks, the pieces that would never fit back together. They wouldn't call him iron. They'd call him broken, shattered, a man held together by duty and guilt and nothing else. But he couldn't let them see, couldn't let them know. They needed him to be iron, to be strong, to be the legend they'd heard about. So that's what he'd be, for them, for the mission, for the men still counting on him. The Chinese probed the perimeter on December 12th, testing, looking for weaknesses. Hartley's tanks drove them back, easy, almost routine, but he knew it wouldn't last, knew the real attack was coming, the big one, the final push. On December 15th, the orders changed. Morrison called him to the command post. Maps spread out, other officers present, everyone looking grim. Major, we've got a problem. The Navy says we can evacuate all the troops or the refugees, not both. There's not enough ships, not enough time. Hartley's blood ran cold. What are you saying, sir? I'm saying we have to make a choice. Our men or the civilians? We can't save both. The room went silent. Every officer stared at the map, at the floor, at anything but each other, because they all knew what the right answer was, what the military answer was, what the order would be. Save our men, leave the civilians. That's how war worked. That's what you did. Soldiers mattered. Civilians were collateral, regrettable but acceptable. But Hartley looked at Morrison and saw something in the colonel's eyes. Something that said he didn't want to give that order. Didn't want to be the man who condemned 91,000 innocent people to death, to Chinese revenge, to massacre. How long do we need? Hartley asked. For what? To get both, the troops and the refugees. How much more time? Morrison checked his notes, did the math. 36 hours, maybe 48. But Major, the Chinese won't give us that time. They're moving up artillery, armor, infantry. They'll hit us in 24 hours, maybe less. And when they do, they'll overrun the perimeter, kill everyone still at the port, soldiers and civilians both. Not if we hold them. Major, you've got 18 tanks. Intelligence estimates 50,000 Chinese troops moving on our position. You can't hold them? No one could. Hartley thought about Funchilin, about 2 tanks against 10,000, about Washington dying so others could live, about the promise he'd made to himself, to never leave anyone behind, to get everyone home. Everyone. Sir, I'm requesting permission to hold the perimeter until all civilians are evacuated. I'll anchor the line. Keep the Chinese back. Give the Navy time to load the refugees. Major, that's suicide. You won't survive. Maybe, but I'll try. That's all I can do. Try. And keep trying until there's no try left. Morrison stared at him, saw the determination, the resolve, the iron will that wouldn't bend, wouldn't break, even when it should. I can't order you to do this. You're not ordering me, sir. I'm volunteering. Me and my tanks. We'll hold, however long it takes. The other officers protested, called it insane, called it suicide, called it a waste of good men and equipment. But Morrison raised his hand, silenced them. If Major Hartley wants to buy time for those refugees, I'm not going to stop him. Get your tanks in position, Major. Hold as long as you can. When it gets too hot, you pull back and get on a ship. That's an order. Don't be a hero. Don't throw your life away. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Hartley understood. He just didn't plan to obey. That night, he gathered his tank commanders, told them the plan, told them it was voluntary. Anyone who wanted to leave could. No judgment, no shame. This wasn't their fight, wasn't their responsibility. Not one man moved. Not one man spoke. They just stared at him with those young, hard faces, those eyes that had seen too much, done too much, lost too much. Finally, a lieutenant spoke. Young kid, couldn't have been more than 23. Fresh face, old eyes. Sir, we didn't come to Korea to run. We came to fight, to do our duty, to stand for something. Those refugees out there, they're counting on us, just like the Marines at Funchilin counted on you. We're not leaving them. We're not leaving you. The others nodded, agreed, every single one. 18 tanks, 72 men, all willing to die so strangers could live, so innocent people could escape, so the right thing could be done. Hartley felt something break inside his chest. Pride, love, grief, all mixed together. These men, these boys, they were the best of America, the best of humanity, and he was going to lead them into hell. All right, get some rest. We move at dawn, position the line, and then we hold for as long as it takes, for as long as we can, for as long as we've got breath in our bodies and rounds in our guns. We hold. The tanks formed up at dawn, 18 Pershings in a long line, 5 miles of steel and determination. Behind them, the port, the refugees, 91,000 people who didn't speak English, who didn't know America, who were just desperate, just scared, just human beings trying to survive. Hartley stood in his commander's hatch, looked at them, saw mothers holding children, old men carrying what little they had left, families trying to stay together, trying to hope, trying to believe that someone cared, that someone would save them. He thought about Washington, about what the corporal had said, about his mother, about going home. Washington had gone home, just not alive, not the way anyone wanted, but he'd gone. These people wanted to go home too, wanted to live, wanted to survive, and Hartley was going to make sure they did, or die trying. The Chinese came on December 22nd, not probing, not testing, but in full force. 50,000 men, 200 tanks, artillery, everything they had, throwing it all at the thin American line, trying to break through, trying to reach the port, trying to kill everyone before they could escape. The artillery barrage started at dawn. Hundreds of shells, thousands. The ground shook, the air filled with smoke and fire, and the screaming of metal tearing through metal. Hartley's tank rocked with each near miss, each impact, each reminder that death was just one lucky shot away. All units, hold your positions. Return fire when you have targets. Conserve ammunition. This is going to be a long day. The Chinese tanks appeared through the smoke. T-34s, Soviet-made, 40 of them in the first wave. Coming fast, coming hard, trying to overwhelm through speed and numbers. Hartley's Pershings opened fire. The 90mm guns barking. One shot, one kill. The superior American optics. The better training. The hard-won experience making the difference. 10 Chinese tanks burning in the first minute. 20 in the second. But they kept coming. More tanks, more infantry, more everything. The Chinese had learned from Funchilin, had adapted their tactics. They came in waves, one after another. Each wave absorbing fire, taking casualties, but pushing closer, always closer. By noon, 3 of Hartley's tanks were destroyed. By evening, 5 more. The crews bailed out when they could, grabbed rifles, became infantry, kept fighting. Because stopping meant dying, meant letting the Chinese through, meant all those refugees dying for nothing. Hartley fought from his tank until the gun jammed. Then he fought with his rifle, then with his pistol, then with anything he could find. A Chinese soldier's rifle, rocks, his bare hands when nothing else was left. Night brought no respite. The Chinese attacked in darkness, using the cover, the confusion, the terror of not seeing death coming, just hearing it, feeling it, knowing it was there, somewhere, everywhere. Hartley's world shrank to the space around his tank, to the men beside him, to the next target, the next threat, the next moment of survival. Everything else fell away, ceased to exist. There was only the fight, the mission, the desperate need to hold one more minute, one more hour, one more day. He lost track of time, lost track of everything except the targets in his sight, the orders on the radio, the desperate calls for help, for support, for anything. His crews were beyond exhaustion, operating on adrenaline and fear and nothing else. Men fell asleep standing up, collapsed at their stations, had to be shaken awake to keep fighting, keep loading, keep shooting, keep living. Sullivan drove with his eyes half closed, steering by instinct, by feel, by the muscle memory of 40 hours without sleep. O'Malley's voice on the radio grew hoarse, then faded to a whisper, then to nothing but urgent clicks of the transmit button. Communication reduced to its most basic. Still there, still alive, still fighting. New Sergeant Harris, Washington's replacement, loaded shells with mechanical precision. Not thinking, not feeling, just doing. Because thinking meant remembering, meant understanding how impossible this was, how doomed they were, how death was just waiting for its moment. Better not to think, better just to do, to fight, to survive one more heartbeat, one more breath, one more shell downrange. On the second day, Hartley watched a tank crew make a choice that would haunt him forever. Delta III, Lieutenant Morrison's tank. No relation to the colonel. Just a kid from Texas with a drawl and a smile and too much courage for his own good. His tank took a hit. Crippled, engine damaged, gun destroyed, trapped in the middle of a Chinese advance. Morrison called on the radio, his voice calm, resigned. "Major, we're done. Can't move, can't fight, but we can still help." "Morrison, bail out. Get to safety. We'll cover you." "Negative, sir. Chinese are about to overrun your position. They're massing for a final push. If we bail, they'll use our tank for cover. Get close to your line. Kill you all." "Lieutenant, that's an order. Bail out now." Sorry, sir. Can't hear you. Radio must be breaking up. It wasn't. Hartley could hear him perfectly, could hear the fear in the young man's voice, the terror, the courage. Morrison, don't. Tell my folks I love them. Tell them I died doing something that mattered. The tank lurched forward, damaged engine screaming, treads grinding, heading straight into the Chinese formation, picking up speed, faster, faster. For the Corps, Morrison screamed. For America, for everyone. The tank hit the Chinese position at a full speed, crashed into their lines, into their supplies, into everything. And then Morrison detonated their remaining ammunition, deliberately, a final act of defiance, of sacrifice, of love. The explosion was enormous, took out 50 Chinese soldiers, destroyed their artillery, broke their attack, saved the line. 4 more Americans dead, 4 more names for Hartley to remember, 4 more ghosts to carry. But the line held. The refugees kept boarding, the ships kept loading. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, the final orders came. All units, begin withdrawal. Last ships depart in 2 hours. Get to the docks. Get out. Mission complete. Mission complete. They'd done it. Held for 3 days. Given the Navy time to evacuate everyone. Troops and civilians both. 105,000 soldiers. 91,000 refugees. All saved. All going home. But at what cost? Hartley did a count. Of his 18 tanks, 6 remained operational. Of his 72 men, 19 still lived. 75% casualties. 3/4 of his command, dead or wounded, gone. He'd killed them, led them into hell and watched them die. Just like Washington, just like Novak, just like Chen, just like all the others. The weight of it crushed him, drove him to his knees, made him want to scream, to rage, to give up, to just stop, to let the darkness take him, to join the dead where he belonged. But he couldn't, wouldn't, because 19 men still lived, still counted on him, still needed him to get them out, to get them home, to finish the mission. He stood, keyed his radio, his voice steady despite everything. All tanks, withdraw to the docks, fighting retreat, cover each other. Leave no one behind, we're going home. The tanks began pulling back, one by one, to go in, covering each other, fighting every step. The Chinese pressed, sensing victory, sensing the kill, coming hard, coming fast, trying to stop the Americans, trying to trap them, trying to kill them all. But the tanks kept moving, kept fighting, kept refusing to die. At the docks, Hartley saw them, the refugees, thousands of them, boarding the last ships, looking back at the tanks, at the Americans, at the men who'd saved them. Their faces said everything. Gratitude, sorrow, hope, all mixed together. An old Korean man approached Hartley's tank, bowed, deep, respectful, grateful. Hartley climbed down. The man pressed something into his hand, a small wooden carving, a tiger, symbol of courage, of strength, of protection. The man spoke, halting English, broken but clear. Thank you. You saved my family, my children, my grandchildren. I never forget. Korea never forget. What you do, who you are. You are hero. Hartley wanted to say he wasn't a hero. Wanted to say heroes don't watch their men die. Don't carry the weight of all that death, all that sacrifice, all that cost. But the man's eyes stopped him. Those eyes that had seen the occupation, seen war, seen suffering. Those eyes that knew what it cost to survive, to endure, to hope. You're welcome, Hartley said, his voice thick. Get on the ship. Get safe. Live. That's all we ask. Just live. The man bowed again, climbed the gangplank, joined his family, joined the thousands streaming onto the ships, streaming toward freedom, toward life, toward hope. Hartley's tank was last, the final vehicle, the final moment. Behind him, the port burned, the supplies destroyed so the Chinese couldn't use them, the docks demolished, everything left behind turned to ash, to denial, to scorched earth. But the people were safe. The Marines were safe. Everyone who could be saved had been saved. The tank rolled onto the ship. The gangplank lifted. The ship pulled away from the dock. Hartley stood on deck, watched Korea recede, watched the fires burn, watched the war continue without him. It was over. His war, his mission, his desperate stand. They'd won, somehow, against impossible odds, against certain death. They'd won. But Hartley felt no victory, no triumph, just emptiness, just the weight, just the ghosts. Brennan appeared beside him. The old sergeant looked ancient now, worn, used up, but still standing, still breathing, still alive. "We made it, Captain. Major, we actually made it." "Did we?" "Because I feel dead. Feel like I died back there. At Funchilin, at Hungnam, somewhere between dawn on November 26th and now, I died. This is just my body, still moving, still breathing, but empty, hollow, gone." Brennan put a hand on his shoulder, squeezed. "I know that feeling. Had it myself after Iwo. Lasted for years. Still comes back sometimes. In the quiet, in the dark, when there's nothing to distract you from the memories, from the faces, from the weight. Does it ever stop? No, but you learn to live with it. Learn to find meaning in it. Learn to honor the dead by living well, by being kind, by making the world a little better because you survived and they didn't. That's the burden, that's the price, that's what we carry." The ship sailed south, toward Japan, toward rest, toward recovery, toward whatever came next. Hartley stood on deck all night. Couldn't sleep, couldn't close his eyes without seeing faces, hearing voices, feeling the weight of every death, every sacrifice, every moment when he'd made a choice that killed someone, saved someone, changed everything. In his pocket, he felt the wooden tiger, felt his father's dog tags, felt the letter he'd written his mother. The one that said he'd earned his tags, that said he'd done his duty, that said he'd made his father proud. Had he? He didn't know, no, couldn't know. His father was dead, gone. Just another ghost, just another voice in the darkness. But Hartley was alive, against all odds, against all logic, against everything. He was alive. And that meant something, had to mean something. Because if it didn't, then what was the point? What was any of it for? The sun rose on Christmas morning, 1950. The war went on. Would go on for 3 more years. Other men would fight. Other men would die. The frozen mountains of Korea would claim thousands more before it ended. But Hartley's war was over. His part done. His mission complete. He touched the wooden tiger. Closed his eyes. Let the morning sun warm his face. Let himself feel something other than grief, other than guilt, other than weight. Hope. That's what he felt. Small, fragile, uncertain. But there nonetheless. Hope that maybe he could survive this, could heal, could learn to live with the ghosts, could honor the dead by being the best man he could be, by making their sacrifice mean something, by remembering, always remembering. The war ended in 1953. Armistice signed. Fighting stopped. Lines frozen where they stood. No victor, no vanquished. Just exhaustion, just relief, just the knowledge that no more young men would die in those frozen mountains. Hartley came home to Montana in June. His mother waited at the train station. She'd aged. Gray hair, lines in her face, the weight of worry worn deep into her features. When she saw him, she cried, held him like he was still a child, like he was still the boy who'd left, not the man who'd returned. "You're so thin," she said, "and your eyes, Jack, your eyes are different." He knew what she meant. He'd seen it in the mirror. The distance, the darkness, the look of a man who'd seen too much, done too much, lost too much. "I'm fine, Mom, just tired, need some rest." It was a lie. He needed more than rest. Needed something he couldn't name, couldn't explain. Something that might not exist, might not be possible, might be forever out of reach. The nightmare started the first night home. Washington dying, Novak burning, Morrison's last charge. The faces of Chinese soldiers he'd killed. The weight of every decision, every order, every moment when he'd chosen who lived and who died. He woke screaming. His mother came running, found him on the floor, shaking, sobbing broken. "It's okay, baby. You're home. You're safe. It's over." But it wasn't over. It would never be over. The war followed him, lived inside him, colored everything he saw, everything he felt, everything he was. He tried to be normal, got a job at the lumber mill, showed up every day, did the work, came home, but he was going through the motions, playing a role, pretending to be alive when he felt dead inside. The other workers didn't understand, couldn't understand. They'd see him staring at nothing, lost in memories, lost in moments that wouldn't let him go. They'd try to talk to him, try to include him. But there was a wall, An invisible barrier between him and everyone who hadn't been there, who hadn't seen, who hadn't carried that weight, except the other veterans. The ones who'd served, who'd fought, who carried their own ghosts, their own memories, their own weight. Hartley found them at the VFW hall, men from World War II, from Korea, all of them damaged, all of them struggling, all of them trying to figure out how to live in a world that didn't understand, that didn't want to understand, that just wanted to forget and move on. They didn't talk much, didn't need to, just sat together, drank beer, played cards, found comfort in the shared silence, in the understanding that came from common experience, from shared pain. It was there he met Sarah. She was a waitress, pretty, kind, patient. Her brother had died at Pusan. She understood grief, understood loss, understood the weight that soldiers carried. One night after closing, she found him sitting alone in the parking lot, just sitting in his truck, staring at nothing. "You okay?" she asked. "I don't know. I don't know what okay means anymore." She climbed into the passenger seat, sat with him, didn't push, didn't pry, just sat. After a while, she spoke. "My brother used to do this, just sit and stare, like he was somewhere else, somewhere I couldn't reach. One night I asked him where he went. You know what he said?" "What?" "He said he went back to the war, back to his friends, the ones who didn't come home. He said it was the only place he felt real anymore, the only place that made sense." Hartley looked at her, saw understanding in her eyes, saw someone who knew, who'd watched someone she loved struggle with the same darkness. How did he get through it? He didn't. He killed himself 3 months after he got home. Pills, left a note that said he was sorry, that he tried, that he just couldn't figure out how to live with it. Tears ran down her face. Hartley wanted to say something, wanted to help, but what could he say? He was drowning in the same darkness, feeling the same pull, fighting the same battle. "I don't want that to happen to you," Sarah said. "I don't even know you, but I see it in your eyes, that same look, that same distance, and I'm asking you, please, don't give up. Don't let the war win. Fight. Keep fighting. Because the men who died, they'd want you to live. They'd want you to be happy. They'd want their sacrifice to mean something." She got out of the truck, walked back inside, left Hartley sitting there, thinking, feeling, hurting, but also hoping. Just a little, just enough. He came back the next night and the next, not for the beer or the cards, for her, for Sarah, for the way she understood without him having to explain, for the way she didn't push, didn't demand, just accepted, just waited, just cared. They married in 1955. Small ceremony, just family, just friends, nothing fancy, nothing elaborate, just two damaged people trying to build something good from broken pieces. Their first child came in 56, a daughter, Elizabeth, named after Hartley's mother. She had Sarah's eyes, her smile, her gentle nature. Hartley held her for the first time and felt something crack open inside his chest, something that had been frozen, locked, dead. Love, hope, purpose, all flooding back, all reminding him that life could be beautiful, could be good, could be worth living. Their son came in 58, Michael, strong, loud, full of energy and life, and everything Hartley had thought he'd lost. Sarah would watch Hartley play with the kids, rolling on the floor, laughing, actually laughing, and she'd smile, knowing she'd been right, knowing he'd found his way back, found his reason, found his peace. But the nights were still hard, still full of ghosts, still haunted by memories that wouldn't fade. Sarah would wake to find him gone, find him sitting in the living room, in the dark, just sitting, just staring, just lost. She'd sit beside him, take his hand, not say anything, just be there, just hold him, just love him through the darkness. "Where were you?" she had asked softly. "Korea, Funchilin Pass, watching Washington die, watching them all die." "Do you want to talk about it?" "I can't. If I start, I don't think I'll stop. I'll drown in it, drown in the weight, drown in the guilt." "Then don't talk. Just feel it. Let it hurt. Let it be real. And know that I'm here, that I'm not going anywhere, that you don't have to carry it alone." And somehow, impossibly, that helped. Not fixed, not healed, but helped, made the weight bearable, made the darkness less absolute, made living possible. The years passed, the children grew, life continued. On the surface, Hartley was successful. Good job, good family, good life. But underneath, the cracks showed. The breaks, the damage that never quite healed. He drank more than he should. Not to excess, not to addiction, but enough to dull the edges, to quiet the voices, to make the ghosts a little less present, a little less real, a little less overwhelming. He attended reunions, saw Sullivan, O'Malley, Brennan, the few survivors who'd made it home, who'd managed to build lives despite the weight, despite the memories, despite everything. They'd sit together, tell stories, remember the dead, honor them, keep them alive in the only way that mattered, in memory, in heart, in the determination to live well because they couldn't, to be good men because that's what the dead deserved, what their sacrifice demanded, what their memory required. Brennan died in 1978. Heart attack, quick, painless. Hartley spoke at the funeral, told stories about Iwo Jima, about Korea, about the man who'd saved his life, who'd taught him everything that mattered, who'd been more a father to him than anyone. Sarah held his hand through the service, held him as he cried, held him together when he threatened to fall apart. He was a good man, she said after, the best. And now he's gone, and I'm still here, still carrying this weight, still wondering why. Why them and not me? Why do I get to live and they don't? Because someone has to remember. Someone has to tell their stories. Someone has to make sure they're not forgotten. And that someone is you, Jack. That's your burden. That's your purpose. That's why you lived. December 24th, 1985, 35 years later. The Korean War Memorial stood in Washington. Black stone, cold, eternal. Names carved into the surface. 4,000 Americans killed in action. 4,000 stories. 4,000 families. 4,000 ghosts. Hartley stood before it, 64 years old, gray hair, lined face, eyes that had seen too much, carried too much, but still clear, still strong, still alive. Beside him stood Sullivan, the Iowa farm boy, now a grandfather, still smiling that impossible smile, still a lad despite everything. And O'Malley, the Boston radio operator, quieter now, more serious, but still breathing, still standing, still remembering. Sarah stood with them, his anchor, his light, his reason for everything. She'd aged too, beautiful still, strong, the woman who'd saved him when he couldn't save himself. A young reporter approached, pretty girl, couldn't have been more than 25, holding a microphone, wanting a story, wanting to understand. Major Hartley, can you tell us about Chosin, about what happened there, what it means? Hartley looked at this memorial, at the names, at his own reflection in the black stone. What happened at Chosin was simple. Young men fought, young men died. Some of us survived, the lucky ones, the blessed ones, the ones who get to grow old and remember. But you're a hero, the stand at Funchilin Pass, saving the refugees at Hungnam. You're famous. I'm not a hero. Heroes are still in Korea, still frozen in those mountains, still 20 years old forever, still waiting for someone to remember, to care, to understand what they gave. But you survived, you won. Hartley thought about Washington, about Morrison, about Novak and Chen and all the others, about the faces he saw every night, about the weight he carried every day. Survival isn't victory, it's just survival. The men who died, they're the heroes. They gave everything, their futures, their families, their lives. I just got to keep mine. Keep living, keep remembering, keep telling their stories so they're not forgotten. What do you want people to know about the war, about what you did? Hartley touched the memorial, felt the cold stone, felt the names beneath his fingers, felt the weight. I want them to know that freedom isn't free, that peace comes at a price that someone always pays. Usually young men, usually the best of us, usually the ones who can least afford it. He paused, looked at Sullivan, at O'Malley, at Sarah, at the few remaining survivors scattered around the memorial. Old men now, gray, tired, but still standing, still remembering, still carrying. I want them to know that the men who died weren't statistics, weren't numbers. They were sons, brothers, friends. They had dreams, had hopes, had futures, and they gave it all up. Not for glory, not for medals, but because it needed doing, because someone had to stand, because that's what Americans do. When the world needs heroes, we answer, we fight, we sacrifice, we never surrender. The reporter nodded, scribbled notes, tried to capture it, tried to understand, but Hartley knew she couldn't. Not really. Not unless you'd been there. Not unless you'd seen the faces, felt the cold, carried the weight. That was okay. That was the burden. The survivors remembered so the rest didn't have to. Carried the darkness so others could live in the light. The ceremony ended. The speeches finished. The crowd dispersed. Hartley remained, standing before the memorial, staring at the names. He pulled out the wooden tiger, 35 years old now, worn, smooth from handling, from being carried, from being remembered. He placed it at the base of the memorial, a small offering, a tiny gesture, nothing that could balance the scales, nothing that could repay the debt. But it was something, some small acknowledgement, some way to say thank you, to say I remember, to say you mattered. Sullivan and O'Malley joined him. Sarah stood beside him, took his hand. They stood in silence. Four people bound by shared history, by shared loss, by shared understanding. You think they know? Sullivan asked, his voice quiet, uncertain. The ones we lost, you think they know we still think about them, still remember? Hartley touched his father's dog tags, still wearing them, still carrying them, after all these years, after everything. I think they know. I think somehow, wherever they are, they know. They know we carried on. We lived, we remembered. We honored them by being the best people we could be. Was it worth it? O'Malley asked. The question they had all been asking for 35 years. The question that had no answer, no resolution, no peace. Hartley looked at the names on the wall. 4,000 Americans, 4,000 stories cut short, 4,000 futures that never happened. But he thought about the 91,000 refugees, the ones who'd lived because men like Washington and Morrison and all the others had stood, had fought, had died. He thought about the letters he'd received over the years, from Korean families, from children who'd grown up free because American soldiers had given them that chance, from grandchildren who existed only because their grandparents had survived, had escaped, had been saved. One letter in particular, from a Korean doctor, Park Min-jun. He'd been 8 years old at Hungnam, had boarded a ship with his mother and baby sister. His father had died fighting the Chinese. His mother had been ready to give up, to accept death, to stop running. But American soldiers had held the line, had given them time, had saved them. Park had become a doctor, had spent 40 years healing, had saved thousands of lives in turn. In his letter, he'd written something that Hartley had memorized, had carried with him ever since. You gave me life, not just survival, but the chance to live, to learn, to heal others, to make a difference. Every patient I save in honor of the Americans who saved me, who gave me this future, who sacrificed so I could exist. I can never repay that debt, can only try to live worthy of it. Hartley pulled out that letter now, worn, creased, read and reread 1,000 times, showed it to O'Malley. This is why. This is what makes it worth it. Not the battles, not the medals, not the glory, but this, the lives saved, the futures made possible. The good that came from all that darkness. Sullivan read the letter, his eyes wet, his voice thick. Washington would have liked this, would have been proud. He always said he wanted his life to mean something, wanted to matter. Looks like he got his wish. They stood in silence. 4 people, 4 survivors, 4 keepers of the flame. Around them, other veterans gathered, other survivors, other carriers of weight, all of them united by shared experience, by common sacrifice, by the understanding that came from having been there, having seen, having survived. A young Marine approached, dress blues, crisp, perfect, could not have been more than 22. He saluted Hartley, sharp, respectful. Sir, my grandfather served under you at Hungnam, Corporal James Mitchell. He died there, December 23rd. I wanted to thank you for leading him, for remembering him, for being here. Hartley remembered Mitchell, young kid from Ohio, good soldier, good man, had taken a bullet saving a wounded Marine, had died doing his duty, doing what mattered. Your grandfather was a hero, one of the best men I ever knew. I think about him often, about all of them. They gave everything, everything, and we owe them more than we can ever repay. The young Marine nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. He wrote letters home, talked about you, said you were the best officer he'd ever served under, said you cared about your men, really cared, that if he had to die, he was glad it was under your command, fighting for something that mattered. The words hit Hartley like a physical blow, drove the air from his lungs, made his eyes burn with tears he couldn't shed, wouldn't shed. Not here, not now. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you for remembering him, for honoring him. That means more than you know. The young Marine saluted again, walked away, left Hartley standing there, shaking, struggling, carrying the weight one more time, one more moment, one more memory added to the thousands he already carried. They stood in silence, remembering, honoring, carrying the weight one more time, one more day, one more moment. Finally, Hartley spoke, his voice strong, clear, certain. It's not the steel that counts. It's not the tanks. It's not the guns. It's the men, the courage, the willingness to stand when others run, to fight when others surrender, to sacrifice when others take. That's what matters. That's what endures. That's what makes us who we are. He saluted the memorial, sharp, precise, perfect, a final farewell, a final honor, a final promise to never forget. Then he turned and walked away, Sullivan and O'Malley beside him, Sarah's hand in his, 4 people who'd seen hell and lived to tell about it. Behind them, the memorial stood, silent, eternal, waiting for the next generation to come, to learn, to remember, to understand the price that was paid, the sacrifice that was made, the burden that was carried, so that others could be free. The sun set over Washington, gold and red and beautiful. Hartley watched it, let himself feel peace, let himself believe that maybe, finally, after all these years, he'd earned the right to rest, to heal, to lay down the weight. Not completely, never completely. The ghost would always be there, the memories would always remain, the weight would always be carried. But maybe, just maybe, he could learn to carry it with grace, with dignity, with the understanding that he'd done his duty, that he'd honored the dead, that he'd lived a life worthy of their sacrifice. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could ask. Maybe that was what his father had learned at Remagen, what Brennan had learned at Iwo, what all the survivors learned eventually. That you carry the weight because you must, because you can, because someone has to, because the dead deserve to be remembered, to be honored, to be kept alive in the hearts of those who survived. That was the burden, the price, the cost of survival. And Hartley would carry it until the day he died, until the day he joined them, until the day when the weight finally lifted and he could rest. But not today, not yet. Today he was alive. Today he had grandchildren to love. Today he had a life to live. Today he had stories to tell. Today he had memories to honor. Today he would carry the weight, and tomorrow, and the day after that. For as long as he had breath, for as long as he had strength, for as long as he remembered. Because that's what survivors did. They carried, they remembered, they honored, and they lived for themselves, for the dead, for everyone who didn't make it home. That was enough. That had to be enough. That was everything. The end.